Good afternoon, Kevin. How are you today?
Good, Danielle. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Today, I thought we would talk about our line of pet supplements that we are carrying online. I thought maybe we would start with one of the more popular ones, which is the joint formula. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the directive for that one?
Yes, the joint formula's premise is to increase tropocollagen. Now, tropocollagen is basically the premise or the beginning status of how mammals develop collagen. Now, of collagen, the subcategory of cartilage composes of three types of different collagen. So, if we increase tropocollagen, the directive is to increase consequently the propagation or the potential of developing new cartilage.
Fantastic. And what kind of ailments or problems would be helped or could be supported by our joint health formula for pets?
Okay, so the first is the most obvious, and that is, a diminishment of the joint space due to a lack of or a loss of cartilage.
Okay.
And that's the first directive. The second directive we're seeing is cardiovascular health, because if we look at the structure, like the vasa intima as an example, in arteries or capillaries, a portion of this is made from collagen, a type of collagen.
Ooh.
So not only are we talking about the health of joints and the health of ligaments and muscles, we're also talking about the potential help of the cardiovascular system, which is really
Oh,
encouraging.
that's really interesting. Um, let's see. So if someone's dog has hip dysplasia, for instance, or arthritis, or is overweight, any of those things could potentially be helped by our joint formula.
Dysplasia, definitely, the abnormal type of tissue. So dysplasia
Mm-hmm.
means just abnormality of the tissue
Right,
itself. And in many
right.
cases, we all hear it, dysplasia is being related to hip dysplasia with animals. And this is what the topic we're talking about today is in
Yeah.
canines. As far as weight, no, not that we're seeing or that I'm aware of where this would have a directive for weight itself. Other than that, for the two other former things that you mentioned, you'll excuse the phone there, the other two conditions you were referring to, yes, there's a potential of being able to help that quite extensively. And that's what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It's the directive, once again, for the joint formula is the potential of increasing cartilage development within the joints and even helping the health of the vertebral body, such as the
Mm.
disc.
Right. And then typical formulas contain glucosamine or green-lipped mussel or some other components like that that you'll find. But ours is different. And do you want to tell me why we choose not to add those ingredients to our formula?
So when we look at glycoproteins, these
Mm-hmm.
heavy, glucosamine sulfate, dermatan sulfate,
Yeah.
chondroitin, and things like that, their
Mm-hmm.
molecular weight is so high and
Mm.
so dense that it is unlikely that they have any beneficial response as far as the potential of propagating new cartilage. Now, there have been some suggestions that glucosamine sulfate and dermatan sulfate can help with pain, and that might be the case because of what is liberated, such as the nitrogen, from these
Mm.
heavy molecular weight components. Other than that, we're not seeing any evidence of potential growth with cartilage or collagen.
Oh, so that's interesting. So those formulas would be more directed at the pain part of the situation, but not actually improving the condition of the
Correct.
joint
Now,
itself.
I do want to emphasize it's not harmful if you want to give
Right,
your
right.
animal those things, but in a way, is there a condition where you can spend your money more appropriately for a
Right.
directive you're hoping to achieve?
Right. Now, if you were to give, say, your animal, if they're uncomfortable and you want to help their joints, could you give them our Canine Factor Joint Health? But could you also give them PAWS Pain to help them with that? Could you do both of those together to not only make them more comfortable, but then also actually help regenerate or support the regeneration of cartilage or
Definitively,
tropocollagen?
yes, you
Okay.
can do that, or the
Anxiety.
be effective just as well as pain for
Oh,
managing pain itself. So not
okay.
only can the anxiety formula be beneficial for calming a hyperactive canine's disposition, but it can also be addressed to help with the pain management.
So it could. Okay. So you could do, so you could, I mean, you could well, actually do all three if you wanted.
Correct. Correct.
But you could do two of any of so either pause pain, pause anxiety, along with the joint health
Mm-hmm.
to support their comfort and the regeneration, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
I
Correct.
know we have a patient that we've had for years who gives their dog the joint health, and they were not running around at all and or walking on three legs, and then have since started using all four legs again. So
Yes, and we've heard
they
that.
have been for years using the formula for their
Right,
pets
which is
with great
great. I
success.
mean,
I know.
and we've heard this several times from several different people, particularly in my office, my
Yeah.
patients that have canines that are using it in the same fashion. So
Right.
we're honored to be able to make this available to the public, and that's what's
Absolutely.
rewarding for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fantastic. And then let's talk a little bit about, so we touched on those two. Let's talk about pause sugar, which their directive is to help balance and maintain a more consistent blood sugar. So let's talk about some of the causes. And I think you will probably feel that there's one particular cause for diabetes on the rise in animals, in both cats and dogs,
Mm-hmm.
and why you may want to consider giving pause sugar to your pet if they're starting to exhibit symptoms of high blood sugar.
Mm-hmm. Well, the most obvious causative factor that we're seeing so far is diet and
Mm,
what the animal's being fed, the
right,
dietary process. And
right.
regardless of how a dried food or a pet food is garnered as being healthy, there's potential. Now, that's not saying that all food is bad. It's not. But the potential of increasing their glucose levels at a demonstrably high rate
Mm,
is the one of the primary reasons why I feel and other researchers feel that we're seeing an increase in diabetes in animals. And it's already known with felines, but canines is beginning to happen as well right now.
So, do you know, and this may be something I need to research, but maybe you know off the top of your head, what is it? What are the elements in? Is it the incorrect ratio of carbohydrates to fats? Is it poor ingredient quality? Is it what is it that's contributing to this?
Well, the
Um,
first and most uh, obvious thing is a sugar. Depending on how the sugar is, the sugar may there's first of all we have to understand there's several different types of sugar. You
mhm,
know, there's monosaccharides, disaccharides, polysaccharides, but in the disaccharide compartment, we have a lot of different types of sugars that can equally elevate the glucose, just as the monosaccharide glucose will. So, the high amounts of ingestion with these type of disaccharides, particularly not necessarily polysaccharides, can lead to an overwhelming abundance of glucose within the system, and this overwhelms the ability for the body, particularly
mm,
glucagon, which is the antagonist to insulin, to be able to
right,
manage the
right,
process. And then
right.
insulin, in the meantime, is really trying to control and regulate the blood sugar by delivering it into the cell. And that requires the receptor capacity, which is called glucose tolerance factor, GTF,
Mm,
the strength of the insulin itself, the activity of glucagon. There's several different factors that come into play here, but seeing an increase of a disaccharide in a pet's diet is one of the more uh, leading
Obvious.
factors for creating
Right.
or inducing diabetes type 2 diabetes.
Right. So, but how does that, sorry, I'm feeling like I'm not understanding entirely. How does that show up? Because I'm sure pet food labels don't just list sugar or like what is it showing up as
It
in
gets a
pet
little more,
food?
exactly,
Yeah.
and that's where it gets a little more um, in depth. And we I feel for the consumer because they don't understand the guise of what happens when a disaccharide is noted, but it's put in a different format, a different name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this gets a little more complex because there's
Yeah.
so many out there that can be used in different fashions and are linked in different ways. And this can be a problem.
Okay.
So your
So,
question, I wish
yeah.
I could answer directly, but there's so many different formats that are
Okay.
listed on pet foods that it
Yeah.
gets confusing because an
Yeah.
individual really has to understand what is the sugar's title that is being
Right.
used and
Right.
how is
Right.
it being
Right.
put into
Put into the
the
animal's
food
food.
exactly.
Right. And then I think we also one of the other things I think is that there is an abundance of vitamins and minerals that are added to pet food that I think you have an opinion on how important they are, if they're important. I mean, it seems to me that if an animal is eating a diet that's close to what would be a normal diet for them, they wouldn't need the addition of additional vitamins and nutrients to such a degree that's included in pet food today. Would you
That
agree
is
with that?
that
Yeah.
is correct, particularly things like vitamin D, calcium, vitamin
Hmm.
C,
Hmm.
which, by the way, humans are one of the few animals that cannot synthesize vitamin C,
Hmm.
where pets can. So what you're
Oh.
doing is you're just emphasizing more of a sugar acid within their system that
True.
reaches beyond the necessary needs of
Hmm.
what vitamin C's role in is
Yeah.
as a vitamin.
Yeah.
So it's vitamin C's primary role is to undergo something we call as hydroxylation. And hydroxylation is literally helping to form tropocollagen,
Hmm.
which is our previous discussion about the development of cartilage or
Yeah.
collagen itself. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean people should start taking or animals should start taking high amounts of vitamin C, hoping that it's going to build collagen or cartilage. That's
Uh-huh.
not particularly how this works. There's other modes of hydroxylation.
Mm.
Oxygen is a hydroxylator.
Hmm.
Iron, when it's within the system,
Hmm.
is a hydroxylation process. So you can see there's so many different aspects
Right.
rather than just vitamin
Right.
C.
Right. So it's be careful not to isolate that and think you need to
Correct.
increase that. It's going to happen naturally.
Correct. And the more vitamin C you add,
Mm.
particularly in an animal's diet, the more sugar you're adding because it is a sugar acid.
Right, right, right. That's true. So I think one thing that our customers may notice is that we don't have a seal of approval from the what's the AS
AFCO.
AFCO
Hmm. Hmm.
because we don't necessarily agree with their guidelines. And so it's not
Exactly. And
it's on
there's and
purpose,
we
you know.
and we and we won't I won't parlay to that. I'm not saying they're not being helpful in many ways, but there are many things I do not agree upon.
Right, right,
On
right, right,
stipulations of, as an example, adding vitamin D. I would not do
right,
that to an
right,
animal,
right,
or
right.
that's why we're not going to go that route.
Go that route. Right. But we do have vets that order from us. It is vet approved. You know, there are so we have different approvals that, but you
Hmm.
won't find that certification on our
Hmm.
labels on purpose. Um, one thing I wanted to touch on is that I think you make your dog's own pet food. And it's
Correct.
at
Correct.
one point you had a pet food company
Hmm.
a long time ago, many years ago, and
Hmm.
now you just make it at home for your
Hmm.
dog. Do you
Correct.
want to tell us a little bit about your recipe?
Easy. chicken, just buy chicken at the store that's uncooked,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
chicken thighs, chicken legs, whatever. And what I do is I put it in a stainless steel pot and boil for about 2 hours. And then that lasts for a week.
Mm.
And then brown rice, sufficient to last for a week. And that's made at once. And then I just grate 1 carrot and I slice some cabbage. And that's what isosceles gets for
Mm.
his meal.
Mm.
And obviously, I add to his food the joint formula, which is very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Just break the cap open
Right.
and the
Right.
cell
And
support. If I could forecast what your next question would be, I'd like to talk about cell support and
absolutely, you can
time.
go.
It's called time
Pause
for
time.
pets.
Yep. Yep.
This is important in 2 ways. Number one, slowing down the telomeres. Telomeres are end caps on chromosomes,
Mm-hmm.
and if we slow down their fragmentation, then we slow down the way a cell divides.
Mm.
And that division rate is called the Hayflick limit.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hayflick limit can be determined in many phases as how we see aging.
Mm.
So our pet formula, time, is based on this scenario to slow down the process of telomere fragmentation. And remember, it's these shoestrings on the end of chromosomes. They look like shoestrings. Basically, their fragmentation rate dictates the process in which a cell divides and
Mm.
how fast the division occurs, the division rate. So the premise of our formulation is to manage or protect those telomeres from premature fragmentation.
Mm.
The second thing about this formulation is detoxification. And how it detoxifies is something called the thiol group. Thiol groups are how sulfur is engaged in the process of latching on to potentially harmful components within the system and to allow them to be excreted relatively quickly. And
Mm.
that's what this formula does. It has two primary goals: detoxification
Mm-hmm.
and to prevent premature telomere fragmentation.
Now, does the thiol group protect the telomeres, or is it something
It's
else in the
believed
formula?
to.
It is believed to.
Sulfur and the sulfur component, like cruciferous vegetables,
Mm.
cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, are being shown to actually
Mm.
help engage in protecting telomeres from damaging responses. You know, things like radicals we've heard of,
Free
and
radicals.
which is nascent oxygen. And if
Mm-hmm.
we can
Mm-hmm.
do that and couple that nascent oxygen before it has an opportunity to uh, detrimentally affect the telomere, that's our directive.
I see. Now, can you regenerate telomeres, or once they're gone,
No,
they're gone?
we don't know any way right now, at least I
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
any way of lengthening the telomeres.
Mm.
But we do know how to prevent their
Decline.
fragmentation
Yeah.
or their
Yeah.
rapid breakdown. And,
Mm.
there's a disease we see in humans called progeria. And progeria is where we see these young kids look like 90-year-olds. They're maybe 8 or 10. And then,
Oh.
unfortunately, their life terminates at an early age.
Mm.
And we found that telomere fragmentation occurs rapidly in the
Oh.
individuals with
Oh.
Hutchinson-Gilford syndrome, which is
Oh.
progeria. And that's how we discovered that telomeres seem to influence the aging
The
process.
aging process. Uh-huh.
Hmm.
So if you can slow that down.
That's the directive of that formulation.
Huh. Huh. That's amazing.
And that's what isosceles gets every day
Right. Right. He's
in
what
his
now?
food.
How old is
He's
Isosceles? 14?
14. Hmm.
And he's a black lab. That's a
He
life,
is.
long life for a black lab.
And I think people are willing, I think we have him on our website, don't we? Maybe not. If we don't, you can see pictures of him.
Yeah. He's a he looks like a spring chicken,
He's a
man.
good
He's
boy, man.
looking pretty good. Yeah, he
Of
is, for
course,
sure.
that's what I'm going to say, obviously.
Obviously, obviously. I'm going to back up for a second. So, joint health for canines, Canine Factor Joint Health, how long should someone expect to give it to their pet to see some results?
Generally within about 2 weeks or 10
Okay,
days.
so that's a 2 week kind of time period. And how
Hmm.
about pause time? What do you think about
That's
that?
longer. That's
That
not
should be like
so
all the
immediate.
time,
Yeah.
every day. Okay,
That is not an immediate response unless they're
right,
sick because
right.
they are in a situation where they're ingesting something that's not
That's not so good
beneficial
for
for
them.
them. Exactly.
Okay, okay.
That one is less where our pause energy, you'll see it quick. With the
Mm-hmm.
joint formula, you should see a relief relatively quick within that 10-day period
Right.
of time.
So pause fatigue, which is our energy formula for dogs, you would see within a day, like
Oh
within
yeah,
the
within
dose,
within literally 3 hours.
3 hours. And then
Uh-huh.
also for pause anxiety, I think you said similarly, just a couple of hours, they will feel,
Exactly.
yeah,
Pretty quick,
yeah,
within 20 minutes.
yeah. Well,
Now,
yeah.
now the anxiety works. We have the premise when I designed it, it was to increase the glutamine cascade
Mm-hmm.
within the nervous system, and that
Okay.
seems to be what is helping uh, decrease the pain, decreasing the anxiety, I should say, not
Mm,
the pain,
mm-hmm.
and increasing GABA aminobutyric acid.
Mm,
All of these things help to participate in potentially helping something we call enkephalins, and enkephalins are pain modulators. And by
mm,
increasing enkephalin activity, we're seeing a decrease in discomfort with animals. So
mm.
that is one of our hidden secrets as
Yeah,
far as the formulation goes. I mean, when
yeah.
more individuals begin to discover anxiety, or in our human form is body comfort, I think
Mm-hmm.
they'll see what we're talking about.
Right, right, right. So some of these can be real quick acting. And then what about pause sugar? That one,
Okay,
couple
that
of
one
days.
is meant. Yep, that one's meant to help encourage or potentiate glucose tolerance factor, which is GTF. And
Okay.
that's the receptor activity on the cell that
Mm-hmm.
allows glucose to enter the cell more efficiently. And we want to oxidize glucose efficiently because this consequently allows the body to transform and increase the adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, which is the energy
Mm-hmm.
molecule that
Okay.
every cell requires in our system to perform its activity more efficiently.
Mm. Now let's talk about that just for a second. Every cell needs the energy molecules, which is ATP.
Correct.
Um,
Well, every cell, like,
yeah,
yeah,
there's a clarification
red blood
there.
cells are a little different. We don't
Right,
have to get into that, but
right.
basically, body
But
cells,
like cells
somatis,
of the
yeah,
muscles of,
exactly, so,
yeah.
exactly. Hmm.
But what contributes to ATP? Let's talk about that for a second. It really is the breakdown of the foods you're consuming, correct? And how efficient you are in breaking those down.
Well, it also is dictated by something we call aerobic or anaerobic, which people have heard.
Okay.
Aerobic means adequate amounts of oxygen supply, because it's important to know that we have to oxidize that sugar. We have to
Mm,
oxidize that glucose.
mm,
So when we have individuals that are unhealthy, respiratory acidosis, or just unhealthy, respiratory compromise, individuals that are overweight or obese, they are
and this
less.
applies to animals too.
Correct. They
Yeah.
are less likely to be able to oxidize because they're
Mm,
more often in an anaerobic phase, and that means
interesting.
the oxygen availability is less.
I see.
So there's two parts of that.
Okay.
There's the ability to oxidize the glucose, and then there's the ability to be able to maximize the Krebs cycle, or the citric
Mm-hmm.
acid cycle.
Okay.
And
Yep.
what that cycle does is it generates adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. And that's why the Krebs cycle is so important. The Krebs
Mm,
cycle relies on uh, enzymes to incorporate or to increase the potential of how the Krebs cycle works. It just potentiates its action. even
Mm-hmm.
further. And that's
Mm.
why those enzymes are so important. And
Right.
what we want to do is we want to increase to a maximum potential the ability for an enzyme to do what it needs to do. Now, many people misunderstand that an enzyme, the more you increase its activity, the greater it is, but that's not true. An enzyme works as a bell curve. Once it hits the apex of that curve and it begins its downslope, then the enzyme's activity is diminished greatly. So we want to be aware of making sure that we increase the enzyme's activity to a point that makes it most efficient, if that makes sense.
It does. Like you really want to hit it. You keep it, yeah.
Exactly, and that's
And
what
how do you know when you've, yeah, is it trial and error to when you a physiology hits
that's
that point?
it's no, it's
That's the
not
magic
that.
question.
It's an
No.
in-depth conversation that would
Yeah.
take probably an hour to go through
Well,
biochemically.
I would like to do that one of these days.
Well, sure, if the
Yeah.
people are interested, and I know
Yeah.
I bore people when I talk about biochemistry, but
No, but for people, for athletes that are interested, and I know we're talking about animals, so we won't stay on this subject, but for people that are interested in athletic performance, I think people would find it interesting and valuable
sure,
to
be
kind
happy
of
to go
dig
into that.
into the science of how your body creates the energy and the enzymes and all of that stuff.
Sure,
Because
yeah,
there's
I'd be
always a
more
way
than
to
happy
tweak
to
it
do that.
and make it better, you know.
Sure,
People are
sure.
always looking for that.
And
And if
that's
this,
our, and
yeah,
that, as you know, Danielle, is our objective, is to potentiate the mammal's ability
yeah,
to be able
yeah,
to do what it does. We're just
right,
bringing it to a different level.
yeah,
In my personal opinion, we have not seen our potential yet. It's almost
right,
like you've heard about what's our potential mentally.
yeah,
Humans only use, I mean, it's debatable,
right,
12% of their
right,
mind or
right,
whatever.
right,
But the same thing can apply to our physical body.
yeah,
What's our potential physically,
yeah,
and
yeah,
how we're able to just unlock these um, these potentials for
mm-hmm,
what we're capable of doing.
yeah,
And I personally feel we haven't even seen that yet, because what we're doing now is we're using processes that diminish
mm-hmm,
or do the opposite. We
mm-hmm,
diminish our potential. We're not increasing our
yeah,
potential
yeah,
because of these ideas that we're hearing, and the just what we're on right now.
yeah,
The media
mm-hmm.
has a tendency to give
Mm,
information that's not
less than
necessarily
complete,
correct, and it
right,
can
less
hurt
than
you.
complete information. Yeah. So
Exactly, and
I
it
think
can be
that
harmful.
that topic also ties into our other conversation that we're going to have, because I want to hear more about what direction you think people need to go to maximize their athletic performance. I think that would be fascinating.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
with animals, let's keep on the subject here
Yeah, for
about
sure.
animals. Let's do the same thing. Let's
Yeah.
understand the potential of animals. Let's uncover that. Let's see if we can increase
Mm-hmm.
not only longevity,
Mm-hmm.
but increase the quality of life. That's what's
Right.
important, the quality of
Absolutely.
their life.
No, you don't want to get them on this hamster wheel of being on medications and the last half of their life or whatever, they're just
Mhm.
troubleshooting
Mhm.
crappy lives, you know?
Let's take
Yeah.
care of them. Let's take care of
Yep.
them in the right way.
Yep.
And that's my personal feeling.
Yeah.
And we don't have to be abusing them. I'm not talking
Mm-mm.
about physical abuse. I'm not talking about abuse like
No.
living in the backyard chain. I'm talking about what we feed them.
Yeah.
That can be considered animal abuse. And I'm not
Absolutely.
in favor of that. I'm not.
No.
I just,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
I'm not
No.
in favor
No.
of animal
And
abuse.
it's become commonplace that, oh yeah, your dog's probably going to develop diabetes. Sorry. You know, it's just going to happen no matter
Hmm.
what you do. And that's just
Hmm.
not the case. I mean,
Exactly.
your dog
Or the
doesn't have
or
diabetes.
these breeds are, it's likely that they're going to live shorter periods of time. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there can be predispositions. It doesn't mean they
Mm-hmm.
have to experience it.
Right.
Like, as an
Right.
example, Panis in German Shepherds. Now, remember,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an animal doctor.
Right.
I
Right.
work on humans, but Panis is due to hyper denaturing of the lens within German Shepherds. I personally feel that there is a procedure, or drops, number one, which aren't even offered to
Mm-hmm.
animals at this time,
Mm-hmm.
can be very effective for that. Eye drops
Mm.
to treat PANIS, and that's a different subject altogether.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But there are
that's what
things
I.
that can be done. Okay.
So the reason, Danielle, we have what we have as a company offering our supplementations to pets
Yeah.
is to honestly potentiate the value of their health. And what I mean by honestly is, I personally, as the spokesperson for Meehan Formulations, feel that the customer has the right of honesty and not being given these formats that are really harmful.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a company that is seeking high value dollar. That's not our directive. Our
Mm-hmm.
directive first is to help
No.
animals or people, and
Right.
that has always been my premise
Yeah.
as the
Absolutely.
spokesperson for this
Yeah.
company.
Absolutely. Well, and I think one thing that's fantastic is that you developed, as the chief scientist for Meehan Formulations, all of these formulas for people, and you have a whole roster of people, patients that see you in your acupuncture clinic and use your supplements, so you get real world feedback. We get customer feedback from our website, but after, if you want to call it testing on humans, we decided to develop the line for pets so that they could receive the same benefits from these formulas. And I think
Human,
that's fantastic that we test on humans first, and
that's
then we give
correct.
it, once it's safe, we give it to pets.
There you go. That's
Yeah,
the attitude.
that's
There you go.
fantastic.
See, instead, we're reversing the protocol here.
Exactly, exactly.
So I think we
Uh,
touched. Do we have anything else to touch? Other?
one of the most important ones, which is all comfort,
Okay, so
is
all
the allergy
comfort,
formula, because
all
that's a big one.
comfort, exactly. All comfort. When we talk about allergies, and there's several different types of allergies, we have an antigen allergen response, it's called. The
Mm-hmm.
allergen is the perceived uh, substance or condition that initiates an antigen response.
Mm-hmm.
So, as an example, pollen.
Mm-hmm.
And being exposed to pollen creates a cascade event with histamine.
Right.
So, and then mast cells secrete mucus and all that wonderful stuff. So, in
Yeah.
animals, basically the same thing applies. Mammals, there can be an intrinsic factor that is creating this situation,
Mm.
meaning that there could be a latent yeast or fungus. There
Mm-hmm.
can be so many different types of variables that could be eliciting an allergy immediacy, meaning that they have an immediate response to, like
Mm-hmm.
scratching, as an example.
Right.
So the formula is designed to, number one, eradicate any potential of an inborn condition that is eliciting a
Mm.
histamine response or a
Right.
mast cell response.
Right. And which
So,
could be mold, could be yeast, could be
exactly,
something that's kind of stuck in the in the body, in the animal's
exactly.
body, that needs to be eradicated.
The
Okay.
second part of the formulations directive is to control histamine. So,
Mm-hmm.
histamine is dependent to some degree on something called histidine. And if
Mm-hmm.
we adequately meet the levels of histidine, then histamine consequently will be controlled more appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
There is right now research that's indicating that a deficiency or an imbalance of histidine,
Mm-hmm.
which is an amino acid, by the way,
Mm.
is something that can help elaborate an allergic response because of a histamine cascade event. So the
Mm.
directive of the formulation, All Comfort,
Mm-hmm.
is number one, to eradicate any potential inborn condition within the mammal
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
elicits a mast cell response or a
Mm-hmm.
histamine response. And number
Mm-hmm.
two is to be able to control and govern the way histamine responds in itself, because many times allergies are not harmful, they're just irritating, they're annoying.
Right.
They're
Right.
not life threatening. If we
No.
look at life threatening situations in humans, we look about we talk about things like, well, food allergies like seafood or something like that that create
Mhm.
anaphylaxis or something like that.
Right.
That's a
Right.
little different. We can touch
Yeah.
on that topic in another conversation. But generally, what we're looking at is what elicits or what causes the mammal to be sensitive to something that is
Right.
otherwise harmless.
Right. Right. Where all of a sudden running in the grass causes them to itch or causes them
Correct.
mucus or whatever. So
Correct.
obviously, you want to be careful if you know your animal has a life-threatening response, that you have the appropriate EpiPen or whatever. I don't know if it's called that for the animals. I should know that. But know that all comfort can also help reduce perhaps that severity. It
Mm-hmm.
may reduce it to a different, but you have to be careful with that. So
Mm-hmm.
really all comfort is best used with your, allergens that are just nuisance, quality of life
Mm-hmm.
kind of things. Would you agree?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. To be safe with that. And then, generally speaking, I think all of our supplements, on the bottle, they list dosage for the smallest animal to the largest, it's starting points and end points. But you can kind of tailor that to how your animal's responding. Is that correct? I mean, all of our formulas
Exactly.
are safe enough that you could bump it up a little bit, you could drop it down a little bit to kind
Mm-hmm.
of calibrate it to what your animal needs.
Exactly. So what we do, our role is just to give a generality
Mm-hmm.
on the dose that should be used.
Right.
It's a generality.
Yeah.
One can fluctuate and adjust those as required.
Right. 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 And that's good to know because some people think of a medication like, oh, you can't take more or you can't take less. But these are different. These are safe. And so you can adjust it up or down. And if people have questions, they can always email us at support@mehanformulations.com. They
Mm-hmm.
can call the office. We can let people know,
Mm-hmm.
what might be most appropriate for their animal for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's fantastic that we offer these to animals, and we're trying to get it in shelters in different areas, trying to donate. So if anyone knows anyone that might be interested, please feel free to get in contact with us. Um, and I think that's about all the time we have today.
Yep.
All right. Well,
Great.
once again,
And
thank you
great
so much.
conversation, Danielle. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I will see you again next time.